streams I'm in, people are turning out to hear about the level of violence in Jamaica. It is really creating a lot of fear. And the question is, somebody even said, oh, Jamaica is a failed state, and it created a lot of buzz around that. But I do think we have to begin to really see not what we can impress upon the police to do, but what it is that we must do to support those communities that are at risk. What can we do as individuals, as NGOs, as churches, as alumni organizations? What can we do to create the conditions such that less people get engaged in crime, so that less people join impossible lines for jobs that don't exist? And I think here is where the diaspora becomes important. Here is where Guyana's oil find and Guyana's willingness to say, let's look at what local content can look like. Because the fact is, CARICOM law means that if a Caribbean company is established in a way that there's a Guyana partner, we may be able to qualify as local content, even though we're not Guyanese born. So we have to look at the trade relationship that already exists within CARICOM to see how we can create jobs, downstream jobs from the oil industry, but from all the other industries we talked about yesterday, from agriculture, from hemp, from moringa, knowing that we cannot rely on oil and plastics to save us in the future. We've got to move towards bioplastics and other things. So I see that our host is here from the other session. Hopefully he'll get online soon. We've one of the panelists, we've a couple of the panelists. And so Herb, I think I'll step off.
You have somebody else that's been waiting in the Safe Cities area. Just text me. I guess.
Right, well, they're coming now. So why don't we get started with who is there, and we'll take care. Just forward the text and then we'll take care of it. So can you just get started? Thank you.
Okay, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Attorney Jonathan Bagham. He's our moderator for this session. And he has quite a team that will be supporting him. I just wanted to say that we both have been working on a regional reporting system that we would like for the US to take up the mantle on that. We introduced it, I believe, at the Commissioner of Police conference this past end of May, first week of June. And it is designed to catch predators who prey on our children. They come from the US down to the Caribbean. They come from the rest of the Western Hemisphere into the Caribbean, and they also go from between Caribbean islands. So we need to get some type of NIDS style. We get it in our communities here in the US. It tells us which predators are in your community, gives the zip code, gives the address. So there's no reason why we can't have a like system. And that's getting in the focus on Caribbean hotspots, murders, gangs, election chaos, and human trafficking. Without further ado, not just human trafficking, but drugs and weapons. I'll turn it over to Attorney Bagham. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Herb. So I'm here to chair this panel on security in the Caribbean region. So this morning we have a Mr. Stafford Grant, Miss Dolores Robinson, not sure of the title, Captain Jerry Gavaya. We have Colonel Fairbairn Liverpool, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So Mr. Stafford Grant, would you like to give us a brief introduction?
Thank you. Good morning to each and everyone. As I said, my name is Stafford Grant. I am a retired corporal of the Jamaica Defense Force after 18 years, past president of the Jamaica Exoder Association in New York, and currently I am the Citizen Security Coordinator for the Jamaica Diaspora Northeast region. So presently, I'm here to really share and also learn from the expertise in security here. Thank you.
Please unmute.
Sorry,
Jonathan.
yeah. Can I hear from Dolores Robinson?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dolores Robinson, the Executive Director for Grassroots Organizations Operating Together in Sisterhood in Trinidad and Tobago. Just an intro, right?
So we're focusing today on hotspots and citizen security and safer cities. So we just like to, as we know in the Caribbean, we have some of the highest crime rates in the world. When you lump the Caribbean and Latin America together, we have the highest rates of sex crimes, drug crimes, a lot of gang violence. Trinidad and Tobago used to have the highest recruitment rate for Islamic fundamentalist terrorism in the Western Hemisphere. So it's a lot of very serious issues. And analysts are predicting, due to the increased food prices and the pressures from oil prices and the Ukraine conflict, there's an increased risk of civil unrest throughout the global South. So today we're focusing on safer cities and an overview of the challenges and potential solutions. So, Mr. Liverpool, are you ready to just give us a brief overview of what your work may entail?
Sorry, I didn't quite get it.
So could you just introduce yourself, Mr. Liverpool, and explain your background of work and, well, possible solutions to the issues of crime and building safer cities in the region?
Is this a repeat, or I was just listening. I thought our session finished, and
Yes, actually, I think you, Mr. Bagan. Mr. Liverpool is just visiting. He's not the panelist. Your panelists are on screen. Pay attention to the screen, please. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Grant and Mr. Robinson. Let's start with Mrs. Robinson, with Dolores. Sorry. Let's hear from Dolores about your background. What is Good City about?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I was just clarifying that you are in and chairing the session with Mr. Nelson. Could you repeat what you just asked?
Hi, Dolores. Could you just give us an introduction about around your work and how that impacts the issue of safer cities in the region?
Okay. And I need to put on. My bandwidth is not that strong, so I have to turn off the camera at times. Okay, our work, Roots Trinidad and Tobago work primarily around 5 areas: domestic gender-based violence, HIV and AIDS, mental health issues, sexual reproductive rights and health, and disaster preparedness and response. We also operate a transition home, which is a space for vulnerable women and children who are survivors of domestic violence or who may be suffering from mental health issues, or women with different sexual orientations.
So, Mr. Grant, can you give us your view on the present challenges facing the region with regards to safer cities and any solutions you have been working on?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, surely. my views and my solution, and that overall is very disappointing at this stage and high technology of what I would see after the start of the saying that, well, being a Jamaican and my emphasis mostly working in the communities and seeing what the situation is with the change of, I would say, the era of growing up with kids. It creates a point wherein I think there is a lack of coordination, the cooperation between the entities, the government, the NGOs, and the I would say faith base. So there's a big gap there in educating the communities, especially within the youths in the primary schools, and the change of how people the concept of earning quick, getting rich quick, create a wide gap there for the kids to more gravitate to as Dr. Dunkley, Dr. Claire has mentioned, the jobs which are not real jobs. So the violence among kids and the community on a whole, it is escalating because, as early on the panelists on the other forum had mentioned, if you do not have cooperation and coordination between the various entities to make it that we have a good understanding, then we're having a problem. And that's one of the problems I see, that we do not have that working together, that unity to work for the same goal. But my solution that I would put forward is education. If we educate the community more of what their value is as a citizen in their community, and also emphasizing on the self-pride to each individual, from the parents to the kids, because most of the families around now, the parents are parents themselves, and it creates that issue about getting the right thing in, the good from bad, and so as to the respect. So my solution here is education. We have to come up with ways how we can educate the community more of what the value they are to our community, to the community. And that's one of the things that we worked on. The different thing in the form of digital ways, because everybody is on digital and phone whatsoever. So we have to come up with an idea and a policy how we can put it out there to educate them. And I think that will make a great difference, creating jobs, infrastructure, and things like that. That's part of my policy where I can see we can move from there.
Well, I agree, Mr. Grant. Throughout most of the region, we do need to invest more in education, especially with the youth, with this large youth population we have in the Commonwealth. And but only as a counterpoint to Trinidad's experience, I was in law school with several young men who ended up joining Islamic State and dying in Syria. So there's we need education, but some of these educated young men have everything handed to them and they threw it away. So we do need probably probably mentorship circles and to build community leaders that, you know, set a good example, because some men want to they want to rise up in dominance over others, and they may use violence, and they may even have education, and education doesn't equal ethics. That's what I'm trying to say. So Dolores, you have anything to say about the topic of education in the region and safer cities?
I don't know if Dolores must be muted. Does she know she's muted?
Actually, I'd like to ask the question, what is a safer city? I mean, one presupposes that all of us know what it is. What is a safer city? What does it mean to have a safer city? When we're attacking this issue, as we heard from before, this very complex and wicked problem, we need to really go into the conversation, not just jump into education. What is it that we're trying to construct when we say safer cities? Jamaica has been going under this zone of special operations. And so supposedly they put the squeeze on one city and people just move. It's not, there's no border around these cities. It's not a walled city. So, I mean, perhaps he could step back and have maybe Herbert and whoever it is that understands what the safer city construct is to sort of anchor us in where we're taking this conversation. I mean, we are really here to discuss what it is that we as diaspora can do to support the people on the ground. So maybe Herbert can explain to us what do you mean by safer cities in this broader systemic ecosystem approach. So we see where the education piece fits in, where the job piece fits in, where the policing fits in, and those things. So because everybody here may not be aware of what it is that we're trying to talk about. Thank you.
In fairness to Attorney Backham, we have a couple missing panelists that were supposed to outline this. But I would say that when we're talking about safer cities, we're talking about communities that are able to assess and garner the assets that they have present in the community. We are working with, for instance, a community in Jamaica right now, Waterhouse, and their biggest talent is music. We have unknown talents we have not tapped into yet, but we're trying to get the community together and to start with the youth. All right, we have a lot of unattached, wandering youth, and I think Dr. Gale, once we get him on, he says he's running late. He would run late today. He will address the gangs, their development and their impact. But we're trying to organize the young people in communities as well as the adults to be their leaders. We have a program that involves the assessment beginning with selection of their leadership. Who are your leaders amongst you? Let them propose some projects, and then we are attempting to support them financially and otherwise with those projects. And a project can be anything like in Jamaica, you take a left or right turn on a road, there are no street signs. Street signs laying down for the last 10 years. Can we get projects where we put the street signs back up, we paint them, and we make them look attractive. And we make sure that we coordinate that with the government. In the communities as well, sports has been our biggest attraction here in the US, in underserved communities. And they're in like Augustown in Jamaica, and Stafford can speak to the Augustown project. These projects are designed to get the community coming together and rallying behind the teams or rallying behind the effort. The safer cities will emanate from the communities being much smarter. If you have broken down fences, messed up houses, if you have carpenters and masons in the community and we can get them all together and we have another project that they go around, we'll solicit from the paint company, from the cement company. We try to get those things contributed. And then they go around and they start fixing things. They start having pride in their communities because now the communities start to look attractive again. It's bright, it's not derelict, it's not a whole bunch of garbage thrown over the sidewalk and in the roads. The potholes in the roads, we had in one project, white mall on the side of the road for about 5 to 7 years. They dumped it there with intention of fixing the roads, but they never got around to it. So we had a project, we bought shovels, and we had, about 24 kids come out, and they fill in the potholes, tamped it down. When we want to fix our driveways here in the US, we'll buy the asphalt, and we can cover over the driveways. But we weren't able to get the asphalt containers down in Jamaica because we would have put the asphalt over the mall that were just filled in those potholes. But you have to get the kids involved, and they will influence their parents. We have a thing with the soccer teams called soccer moms. The kids who don't normally eat a breakfast during the week, they look forward to a breakfast at the soccer field when they get there at 8 o'clock in the morning. And they eat, we give them a chance to digest. They get on the field at 9, they practice till midday, and then we give them refreshments before they leave. And that's the best meals that they have had all week. So, when we are promoting the different activities in our communities, they look forward to it. And this keeps them away from the gangs. It gets them out of trouble. They can take home refreshments to mom. Usually a lot of single parent households. And so we give mom a break by babysitting those kids for more than a half day. Sometimes we'd hang around at the field till after 4, after being there at 8, because mom is working 2 jobs or dad is working 2 jobs. So this is how we get our communities smarter, and we begin to get our kids off the street, get them engaged, and we produce a safer city. It goes further than that because we try to engage the police department and the military to do a train-the-trainer program. And if you're policing a community, if you're out there as that trainer, that coach, those kids going to show you respect. We know that here in the US, there's a lot of respect for coaches, and the kids do not run around misbehaving in front of their coaches. So we can bring to our community in the Caribbean the same trainer program, whether it's soccer or basketball or volleyball, any area that you can think of where it's needed. And then we add the other civic education to it. In addition to the civic education, there might be a job training program that we'll engage them on. So when you talk about safer cities, it's very extensive. And each element, the population, all the way up to the government has a role to play. And that pretty much is our safer cities overview.
Can I intervene? Just say something here.
Okay.
Okay. I just got in here back home here in Pennsylvania 3:30 this morning. I've been in Jamaica for the past 2 weeks. I went down for the Jamaica Diaspora Conference, and I have been to many of the cities, which include what Herb has just mentioned, Waterhouse, and most of the inner cities. Ended up in South Lamar, Westmoreland, working with the community leaders and the faith base. And what I gathered there is what's now where there's a lot of programs in Jamaica. There's a lot of NGOs, because after the conference, the Diaspora Conference, we had a round table talk at the UWI with various NGO groups in Jamaica with some very brilliant young men and women from the various schools. They have some good ideas, some good programs, teams. The thing is sustainability. When you come up with a prompt, with a solution to say, okay, we're going to do this, like what Herb is doing in Waterhouse. Where is the sustainability in that program? Is there a program wherein that company is going to take it on, adapt it to ensure it's going to go on for a good period of time? Because this is what we are experiencing there right now. A lot of the kids within the communities, there's a program started, and 2 or 3 months down the line, things sort of fade out because they are not getting the support. And the thing about it, again, the volunteering. The concept that I know in Jamaica, what I'm speaking strongly about Jamaica, is that if someone is doing something and nothing is not there for him directly, if nothing isn't for me directly, then after a while it fades out. When it comes on to the community and the potholes, you have some communities that organize together to fix a pothole. But what some of these guys does there, you got to pay them. They are asking the motorists that you're driving through here, we are fixing the road, it's like they are taxing you. So it creates another issue there for the supervision. You have another community that is very nice. It was asphalted and everything, but it was not done by proper or professional engineers. So some of the structure that the sleeping policeman that they put across the road is not properly complete set up. So you find people swinging in and out the little gaps that they have to go through. There are a lot of little things there that a safer community, if we do not have a good policy and proper supervision and the
Hi, Stafford. I just want to hear from Dolores, and we're going to Dr. Herbert Gale right after. So Dr. Gale, just prepare ready right after Dolores. So Dolores, go right ahead and make a little presentation.
Hi, good morning, everyone. First of all, thanks to Dr. Nelson for that extensive outline of what a safer city is. My presentation this morning is along the line of achieving safer cities and spaces, because it can also be safe spaces as to safer cities, please. So allow me to please go back to last weekend in Trinidad and Tobago. Yesterday, Thursday, 16 June, was a public holiday. Sunday, June 19th will be Labor Day, which is to be celebrated on Monday, June 20th. Today is Friday, June 17th. Walking through Woodford Square in the city of Port of Spain, on my way to a meeting, I noticed a woman sitting on a bench with a child. 3 hours later, on my way from the meeting, the woman's seating position was changed. She's now sitting on the opposite side of the fountain, maybe to avoid the midday sun. But her characteristics remain the same. Hungry, a child, a small bag, no job, needing help, going nowhere in a hurry. And, that's the name I gave her, is a domestic violence survivor. Unable to take the licks and abuse anymore, she packed her few things in a shopping bag and with her son headed to the city. While Thursday night was spent on the hospital compound, dodging security and authorities, with this long and festive weekend, sad will be her portion. In Trinidad and Tobago, the incidence of domestic violence has been on the rise, more so over the last 3 years. Data from CAPA, which is the Crime and Problem Analysis branch of the TTPS, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, revealed that for the period March 2018 to March 2020, there were 2,710 reported cases of domestic violence. However, for the period March 2020 to March 2022, reported incidents rose to 4,857. According to the police officer Richards, this translates to about 7 reports per day. Making cities safe is one of the key aspirations of the Goal 11 of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Equally so, the integration of crime prevention policies into urban strategies and interventions is a key commitment to the new urban agenda, giving impetus to the work of countries and the international community at large to develop safer cities. To quote Sistine Theatre Collective of Jamaica, And I quote, "The most promising approaches to urban safety and security and to address the multifaceted causes of crime are addressing both the human and the technological factors, including improving the local governance of safety as a public good through civil participation, placemaking and community development efforts that strengthen local ties. Equally important are the complementary efforts in the prevention of crime, on intelligence gathering, strengthening policing, and community outreach, investing in new security technologies to improve urban safety." End of quote. What is needed? Partnership, collaboration with a range of state and non-state sectors, actors, CSOs, entities like the Multi-Agency Risk Assessment Committee, acknowledging differences across gender identity and age, with particular references to women, youth, children, persons with disabilities, indigenous people and local communities, refugees and international displaced persons and migrants, particularly the poorest of those in vulnerable situations, and the private sector, of course. Consider the linkages and include the relevant indicators of the 2030 agenda goal that relate to goal 11 on making cities safe, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable, in particular, fighting poverty.
Hi, Dolores. So we just want to give Dr.
Yeah.
Herbert Gale a little time. So Dr. Gale, are you ready to have a say? Are you hearing me, Dr. Gale? Okay. So Dr. Gale, your background is in gangs and developments. Let's just hear a little from you on safer cities.
All right, let me say morning. I'm actually in another meeting, so let me just turn this one off. Thank you. Hold on. All right, good. So can you allow me to share? I have a small PowerPoint to share with you.
Hi, Dr. Claire, can you let Dr. Gale share screen?
I think it's at the bottom of your screen, Dr. Gale. You see share screen?
Yeah, we should see it still in the box, Dr. Gale. You should see it. So just start to share and it should pop up.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about why gangs exist in Jamaica and the rest of the LAC. And I want to just begin by showing the position of Jamaica and the other Caribbean countries. Belize, Trinidad, not so far behind. This is a reflection of the average homicide since the year 2000. So I'm providing you with a quick idea of the space that we live in. And these are the two gang hubs in Jamaica. You will notice the one in brown is the western side of the country, and the one in blue is the original side leading from Kingston with a homicide rate of 156. And then, of course, working through to the others. And then if you look, there's an X in Manchester, which means there's an attempt by the blue area to take that area as part of the gang frame. And there's also an X in St. Elizabeth because Westmoreland and Hanover and St. James and Trelawney actually operate in that parish in a limited way. All right, and if you take those, this is a gap analysis. If you take those lines, you'll see the green one at the base, which is 30 per 100,000. You will notice that that's the Civil War benchmark. You will notice that for most Jamaican parishes, they exceed that. If you take the purple one and use it very carefully, because all we're doing is working with the 205 per 100,000 persons who died in war-related deaths. And you will notice that for Kingston and St. James, young men, what we call of the combatant age, 15 to 34, exceed that for both parishes. So we know for sure then that we go back, we understand that St. James, which is JAM on your left in the brown, and Kingston 156, those are the two gang hubs in Jamaica. All right, but we also have to understand that when we look at homicide in Jamaica, we have to take it from what we call an objective GBV analysis, not what GBV is often used in campaigns, but as in what it is used for in academia, gender-based violence. And so the first thing you have to look at is the fact that 80% of all the persons who die in Jamaica are males between the age of 18 and 69. The second largest group are boys. And this is what I've been trying to say to people for a very long time, but I guess everybody seems to be deaf. The second largest group of persons who die in Jamaica violently are boys, 9.1%. The third group would be women, 18 to 69, 7.8%. And the fourth group would be males 70 and older, and then girls, and then females older. These are the data you have, and this is the average data since the year 2000. Now, what has been our success story so far? In 1980, which is the first peak you see there, which we notice surpasses the number 30, meant it was a political war in which over 800 young people were killed or killed themselves in the name of JLP and PMP within the frame of what we called our version of or the impact of the Cold War on Jamaica. If you notice, you will see that Jamaica has not gone back down tremendously since then. After a peak in violence, there's usually a gulf or a trough, and then it rebounds. Right, and since then we went up as high as 64 per 100,000 in 2005, and then back in 2017 it was very high, and then the government of Jamaica applied SOEs, which are now holding but not reducing. There's a difference and this is what is called a pressure cooker effect. You are steaming underneath that pot until the explosion comes. All right. So why do we have gangs? If you have a setting like that, then you must understand what we're talking about when we say gangs in that particular context. A context, let me remind you, a context in which we are the fourth most violent place on earth, a context in which we have two very active hubs, a context in which young men between the age of 15 and 34 have been at constant war for quite a while, okay? And also a context in which the small numbers you're looking at gets massive fundings, but the large area gets very little funding. Let me say that in English language. As soon as you speak to funders about addressing the violence in Jamaica, they'll tell you about violence against women. And this is not a joke. This is what I know to be so. And you are going to understand that 64% just came off of a call with a friend of mine who's working news, and he says, Herbs, I wanted to make some comment on this. I said I had a meeting, but what was he saying? There are 8 women who are marked for dead in a community. All right, women in Jamaica die, people know on the ground, not the people who write, but the people who know, from the same stories. They're either accused of being an informer, or their entire family is being wiped out because there's a gang wipeout, or they are accused of being a gang strategist. 64% of all women who die in Jamaica will die because men are fighting men. Yet the resources say we are going to address the 1.78% of women who die at the hands of a man in a relationship. And that cannot be the way to save women. If you want to save women, you have to be saving everybody. That's what the data say. So why do we have gangs? If you go online and type in Harvard Review, Herbert Gale, gang defined, it will pop up. There are some characteristics of a gang. It must have 3 or more persons. It must be operating over 3 or more months, because it must have some degree of permanence. Otherwise, it will just be a crew of people cooking food and eating and catcalling girls. That doesn't make them a gang. They must be competing violently for scarce resources. They must be hierarchically structured because it must have a don or a few dons. And this is the section that you will not find very often. Gangs have a hidden or not so hidden connection to a country's administration, or businesses, or international sources of contract or funding within a framework of symbiosis, which means that gangs don't just benefit gangs, they also benefit other people who are ashamed or afraid to be associated with them, but are in fact associated with them. So a lot of what we call gangs, you know, when you go to when you look at police data on gangs, those of us who work in this area, we actually laugh because it says there are 300 and 400 and 500 and 600 gangs. But is that even remotely possible? No, because what they count quite often are gang units, because a group that depends on a larger gang is not a gang, it's a gang unit. Gangs, but do they operate? Yes, they operate because the large gang uses these gang units to carry out chores. Okay, and that is why somebody who doesn't understand how a gang is defined will deem them to be gangs when in fact they're actually gang units. All right. Now, a gang serves many purposes. There are families, there are all kinds of stuff to different persons, but I want us to look at 4 things for the next few minutes. The first one is protection, right? And the protection is from rival communities or turfs, but also from the state. Okay, and this is where it gets sad. This is where people get offended when I say, if you have been trying to solve a problem for a very long time and the problem is becoming worse, you should stop for a moment and assess and ask yourself this question: am I a part of the problem? Because the second belt of ontological security, the first we know, everybody knows the first thing about ontological security or a sense of future or a sense of hope is having food. If you don't have food, you don't have a sense of future. The second belt of of ontological security or having a sense of future or being a stable human being is to have a sense of safety, to know you're safe, to know you're not going to die tomorrow. And if you're constantly under attack from your rival gang and constantly under attack from the state that is supposed to protect you, then, of course, you can see how the state, in its constant suppression, in its constant attack on communities, actually help to foster gang rather than to reduce gang. And then the other one that many persons are very scared of hearing is that gangs actually provide business people with a cheaper security than using security firms. It's called extortion, and it is actually cheaper. I've seen 3 different studies done now that shows that it is cheaper than going to security firms. What's the problem there? If you go to a security firm, you have to pay the security firm, then you have to pay the young men because the security firm cannot protect you from the young men. And therefore, businesses have helped to cement extortion by calculating, checking their books. Okay, might as well just go directly to the source, pay the source to protect me from the source, cheaper. Number 2, provision, right? Economics, food, contracts in environment of scarce resources. And people will always tell you, if Darwin does not select me, select yourself. The fittest of the fittest, right? The social welfare. Every time governments go into communities and remove a don, they always forget something. The don was your Ministry of Social Welfare. So if you remove a don, you need to actually do the audit that says what roles, right, was the don playing. He was paying tuition. He was providing food. The state has to fill that in. And the very few countries I have seen where that is done, the murders go down. What do we do in Jamaica?
Hi, Dr. Gale. So could you, excellent presentation so far. So could you talk about some of your research in the other Caribbean countries?
Yes,
as well?
Thank you. All right, good. Right. So if you look at Trinidad, if you look at Belize, if you look at El Salvador, Guatemala, all around, what you'll see is the very same thing. The removal of a don or a henchman, or whatever term is used, And of course, what happens because the state does not fill that gap is that there's a replacement with corner dons, which means one big don is removed and 4 and 5 small dons are replaced. All right. So quite often it takes a long time for a single don to cement his place and to have all of this estate around him. Once he goes, it splinters, and the role, the process of building up to become one big don again starts, and the bloodshed just massively increases. It just blood everywhere because the state did not do its job. If you remove a don, you have to replace it with welfare. That's been a crisis in this region. In Belize, that is where I've had the most success. I've had Dean Barrow, I've had Dr. Singh, I've had other persons sit down and listen, and they've done some of this work, and you'll see changes in Belize that you won't see in Jamaica. So the third thing is identity or sense of self, respect, and segmentary factionalism. Now, only 6% of Jamaicans, only 6% of Jamaicans are neither JLP nor PMP, they're just Jamaicans. And we've done this research so many times. 2007 election, 2011, 2016. People pretend they are not, you know, the amygdala is not all wrapped up around PMP and JLP, but that's the reality, 6%. Too small a margin for us to come out of this binary that we're in. And people tend to still present this idea that political violence is long gone and it's only the gangs, and the gangs are unconnected. We know these things are not true. So for gangs, there's issue of identity and a sense of self and to gain respect. That's why you have so many books. They cry respect, in search of respect, all of these things. And that is wrapped up in the fact that inner city young men have very few plates of identity. So if you threaten one, so let me see if I can break this down. If you take a young man who is from the suburbs, right? In Jamaica, we call it uptown. Uptown means downtown elsewhere, right? Now, he's a member of a club, he's a member of a family, he's a member of a university, and you need to check, on average, he has 20 plates of identity. If he loses a plate of identity, 5% of his identity frame is gone. In an inner city, they have labor right or comrade and their corner. If you attack one of those, they can be manipulated to understand that 50% of their sense of identity is gone. And that is why the less plates of identity a human has, the more affect or the more violence is involved when one is attacked. And that is why inner city kids can be manipulated by dons or MPs or anybody to protect the turf quite easily for the purpose of voting. Political garrison maintenance. We are aware that this has been reduced, but it is still the core of intimidation and vote buying, right? In the last couple of elections, we saw an enormous swelling of vote buying, all right? And this was very precious because of the high levels of vote apathy. So if you look at Jamaica, if you look at other states around, you'll see that as voter apathy goes up, then it puts pressure on political parties to be closer to the people around on the ground who can provide them with vote. This is what we call political symbiosis. For those who forget our history, let me just take you back a little bit. The PNP was founded in 1938 by Norman Malley. By 1943, his cousin founded the JLP and immediately won the election. Modern representational politics started in 1944. The Daily Gleaner, 4 years later, volume, see, it's right there. November 11, 1948, page 8 wrote, "Men who should be considered in the highest regard too often appear in the company of persons known to be of evil reputation. The election is being conducted in some quarters as if it cannot be won without the support of criminals. This relationship has waned, but it has not disappeared." All of this has taken us to what I call the framework of violence in Jamaica. We're a group of people in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in Belize, in all countries of the LAC, where persons have come from a history of violence, of colonization. The people of the New World, as it is called. Right? To the right side, you will see they have problems with absent fathers and unsupported mothers. That causes them to immensely torture boys or put patriarchal pressure on boys to become men too early. If you're asked by everybody to provide 100 and you only have 5, you seek a source of income. Gangs are usually available. Okay, that leads to fear factor within the JCF and within the Belize group, within all the security forces, because they now are asked to carry water in baskets because they don't have the resources and they're always war ready. Note that word, war ready, from fear. On the left side, you'll see that we have not made the transition from being ruled to self-rule. The 4 frames of our central political authority is fragile. All 4 of them are fragile. The judicial, so the legislature or parliament at the top, they do not normally make policies based on research. Quite a lot of it is just gut feelings. And I've said to people, if you have a gut feeling, you should be heading to a toilet, not making decisions. The judiciary has all sorts of problems, and you've been following the news. They're trying to right now have a trial for a gang, for a group of gang members, and it's all over the place. When you get down to the third branch of the central political authority, you're talking about national security, right? ZOSO and SOE are the 2 pillars upon which we are doing policing, right? And then, of course, below that is an antagonistic group called civil society that keeps asking questions of the top. That is the framework of what we have. If you look at all of that, it is ripe and beautiful for gang formation and gang maintenance. Now, violence must be examined on 3 levels: primary, secondary, and tertiary. And if you find yourself doing just the tertiaries, you are not going to do anything other than prepare for the next election. You are not going to solve violence long-term or medium-term. So the primary means the structural and the long-lasting, such as making sure your boys and girls are in school, such as making sure you invest heavily in parenting skills, such as making sure that people have a real gender analysis rather than just campaign material, so people understand things. So there's a mentorship program, so the families is okay, or the families at least, so every child at least has 1 stable parent. That is all the human species asks of us. Just have one stable parent. Otherwise, we would have been like snails that can breed themselves. Yeah. And then the community level, changing people's norms and mindsets. That's the primary level. Then we go to the secondary level, where we look at conflict resolution, counseling, social welfare, providing people with jobs, taking members, boys and girls who are part of gangs, right? And remember that 15% of gangs are actually females in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in Belize. Women are not outside of gangs as we think. Taking those and redeploying them, sending them back to school, making sure that you dry up the pool from which gangs are recruited. All of this is called a secondary. And here's a tertiary, where governments in the region spend their money. The purpose of the tertiary: temporary relief, crisis adaptation, making sure people get the morphine that's needed for the next election. What do we mean by morphine? When you go to do a surgery and they give you morphine, I have seen on repeated cases where the people, upon getting the morphine injection, ask, do I still need to do the surgery? Yes, we still need to do the surgery. The morphine only makes you temporarily happy. That's what governments have been doing. They've been having peace treaties, ceasefires, states of emergency, SOE, right? Sorry, ZOSOs. Sorry, somebody spoke.
Oh, yes, I'm currently Zooming from St. Mary, Jamaica. So if I lose your contact, then it's because of flow, not me.
Okay, all right, good. Sorry. All right, peace marches, gun amnesties. Some of the tertiaries that we've been doing are absolutely ridiculous. I remember one of my students sitting down with a group of young men and saying, when gun amnesties come around, how do you feel? Oh, we're so happy, miss. We get to bring in our old guns and use the money to buy new guns. These tertiaries have become so ridiculous. I've now gone as far as to Europe, right? I've been invited to even a couple European countries where they ask me about gun amnesties, and I say to them, you know, use the money to invest in the primaries rather than these gun amnesties and prayer breakfasts. You know, you go to nice prayer breakfasts, it's the best ackee and saltfish, but after that, what do we do? So here's the crux of the matter. If you're talking about changing the landscape of violence, of violent crimes in countries like Jamaica, Trinidad, and Belize, where I spend the bulk of my time, the first thing you have to do is come to terms with reality. If a boy drops out of school by grade 9 and you use that boy as your baseline, when you compare that boy with other boys, you are going to be very shocked. If the boy competes at least 3 CXCs, he's going to be 4 times less likely to be high risk, right? We mean to be harmed or to harm someone using a gun or a knife. If he completes CAPE or A-levels, as we call it, or he does even a little diploma, he's 10 times safer. If he enrolls in a college or university, he's 85 times safer. What does that mean? It means that the primaries work. It means that if you invest in the primaries, you are going to see results in 15 years. Are you going to see massive results so you can win an election in the next 5 years? No. Is this a reason why so many governments take so long before they decide to work in the primaries? Yes, because governments are primarily concerned about power rather than service. By running the index against, if you run an index with what we call the ontological security index, you're going to find something interesting, that when you take food, safety, parental support, and so forth, that education, a child having opportunities, right? Educational opportunities, training opportunities is going to supersede all of those. But look at the apartheid system in Jamaica. And Belize is almost as bad. It's about 10% better. Trinidad is about 20% better. But so let's look at the Jamaican one. A person who goes to an all-girls school, which means that's a girl we're talking about, has an 89% chance of going to university. If you go to an all-boys school, you have a 69% chance of going to university. If you go to a traditional co-ed, 61%. And therefore, the average for those traditional schools was 48 traditional schools in Jamaica, is 73% on average. If you go to a technical school, 17%. If you go to a new secondary school, 10%. If you're an inner city boy, if you're an inner city girl that goes to a new secondary school, you have a 17% chance of going to a university. If you're an inner city boy, you have a 3% chance, 3.1% chance. Why would somebody with a 3.1% chance not become your nightmare? And that is why we keep saying to people, address the primaries, address the primaries. I've become so boring reminding people to address the primaries, but the bulks of money I see go anywhere, tertiaries. So let's look at the impact of all of this. The police sent me this material just some weeks ago, and then I saw it being printed in a newspaper. I did the calculations for them and sent them back this chart. So let's share the chart. Okay. If you look at murders, shootings, and breaches of the Firearms Act, you have 306 cases between January 2016 and October 2021. Look very carefully. Only 24% of anybody found with a gun or charged with the shooting or breaches of the Firearms Act would have had any form of training, including even heart. Can you imagine? Didn't say first degrees. You just need to have some form of training. It means that more than 3/4 of the people in Jamaica who are likely to kill someone, shoot at someone, or be found with anything at all of ballistic value would be somebody untrained. Back to the primaries. If we're not addressing the primaries, we're not going to be addressing the gang crisis we have. So what's the way to go? Step one, within a national violence audit allowing for directions by research, we need to bring 2 people together. One is called Herbert Gale, the other one is called Paris Leahy, who has a safer platform that can look at the data. He needs to understand the data. He needs to load the data on this platform, but he needs material from somebody who can do an audit and who understands. The second thing, after having done that, you need a violence reduction plan across a 15-year epoch broken down into 5-year frames so that the politicians who are getting ready for their next election can make sense of the material. Okay? And the third thing you need to do is to establish a snake in a tunnel framework for development so that no group exceeds 60% or falls below 40% in core needs. At the University of the West Indies, if you take all the universities in Jamaica, to every 100 males you see at university, there are 228 females. Yet, out of every dollar spent in education, males who are doing legal and illegal work pay for 84.1% of all tuitions. In other words, you're ending up with women, right, who have a MA but no MAN. You're ending up with men who have dollars but no cents. This kind of framework, funded by international money, cannot continue to persist in the region. The same problem in Belize, the same problem in Trinidad. Trinidad being the widest away from Jamaica because, of course, they're the wealthiest country in the region. But in Trinidad, when you go to John, Laventil, when you go to these areas, you see the precise thing that you have in Jamaica because those become the isolates. Or a little community called Bangladesh nearby the university in Trinidad. Just this precise frame. When you look at the educated, 78% women, yet these women earn only 63 cents to a man's dollar. Where are the men getting so much money then to outperform women economically despite not being educated? The informal economy, 30% of which is completely illegal. A lot of work needs to be done in this region. And again, let me be boring again, we have to go back to the primaries. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Gale. That was one of the best presentations on gang violence I've heard in many years. Fantastic.
In my life.
Well, Dr. Nelson would know better than me. Yes, Dr. Gale, Alicia Clark wants to know if you can share the deck. That I fully agree because in my legal practice, I don't do too much criminal law, but when I see the murder courts, everybody there doesn't have more than 1 or 2 CXC passes. Most of them are illiterate, semi-literate, and those the ones out of necessity end up into gang violence. And of course, the gangs remain in the Caribbean because our politicians need them there for various reasons. So I agree with, and of course, I fully agree on the funding of men's issues as well, because most of these European Union and US aid things go into domestic violence. But if it's the men killing the women and the men have these issues, you have to fix the men, then we fix the whole society. Well, yes, I agree with Dr. Luncheon. His book needs to be made widely available, but we have this video. I did on Facebook or YouTube, so we could always just, replay this video. Thank you, Dr. Gale. If you have anything else to say, Dr. Gale, I'd love to hear it.
It's just my constant boring reminder of persons that after a while of mopping up sewage on a street, you should get tired and simply walk up to the top of the sewage and turn it off. And I keep saying that to people. I remember saying that to Dean Barrow, Prime Minister of Belize, and he started laughing and he said, "Is it that easy?" And I said, "Yes, it starts at your office. Start turning it off." You have all this social intervention, you have all of these massive investment, you get all these IDPs, international development partners, giving you monies to get mops to go in the street and mop up the blood. Why don't you just go up to the sewage plant and turn it off? And turning it off means getting all your children in school, making sure that everybody, right? So stagger your tax, do whatever you need to do, right? We have countries with up to 45% tax on petrol. Where do these monies go, right? Nobody in the region seemed to be interested in ensuring, barring Barbados a little bit. And I have my beef with Barbados in the sense that when you look at what Barbados considers to be education, and it has tried its free education for so long, actually put Barbados in the top 10 worst gap between men and women in the world in education. That's not education. If you look at Agbo's work, if you look at anybody who's done this, they say to you, if women are denied education, then you will have no social stability. If men are denied education, you will have no technology that will drive your stability. So it amounts to the same thing. And I've been trying to say to people that gender equity and gender equality cannot be about gender advantage. I have never met a man who says to me, Herbs, I want to have menstruation. I want to know what it feels like. We can't even manage a little bit of cramps from gas. I've never met a woman who says, I would like to be shot at 14 times more than the other person, which is the life of a young man. So nobody really genuinely wants the bad section of the others, but the package of life comes with good and bad. And that is why I've been saying to people, provide equal opportunities for persons and show them how to get to it. I'll leave you with this story. I'll leave
let
you.
me hear a story, Doctor.
I'll leave you with this story. A young man was stabbed in Augustown, and he ran past the community clinic on the Mona campus, trying to reach the hospital on the other side of the Mona campus. He was just flowing blood along the street. I saw him, I rushed out to him, and I grabbed him. And he says, you're stopping me from reaching the hospital. I said, you are there. There is a clinic right here. It has doctors. And I'd kicked on the door and called the doctors out, and that's how his life was saved. What's the purpose of this point? If you don't know where to turn for help, which is the case of 91% of young men, how are you going to seek help? We get a lot of naive middle-class ideas about young men from a lot of people because they don't know. When you interview young women, 98.2% of young women know where to turn for help. 9% of young men know where to turn for help. The gap is too wide. We're going to continue having this violence unless somebody gets up and say, let's have real gender. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gill. So let's hear a quick comment from Stafford Grant. Again, you're correct, Mr. Grant, about the education of the young, well, more at the high school level and, well, primary school. And then we'll hear from Wilfred Rattigan. I believe that's the ex-FBI gentleman. Let's say from Mr. Grant.
Yes, thanks a lot. It's a beautiful presentation here, Dr. Gill. You always do that. You always have some good information there. But my thing all the time when we have these forum and these nice presentations, what are the suggested solution? What are the method, the policy to help to create a better way out? The data and everything is good, presentation good, but what is there to put in place? As I said, we educate the community, and it's not about academical education, just like what you mentioned with that young man there. We need to have policies in place on how we can educate the community so they know their role and where to go to get information and what they can do. So what do you think is the best solution that can be put together, working together, that we can have a better result?
All right. So what I've said is that, first of all, I need to have an audit. I was going very quickly, so let me slow down. You need to have, there is a young man in Jamaica called, I still call him a young man, Paris Liaye. You also have about 3 other persons that do geoinformatics. Okay. Now, those persons, when they create platforms, can't fill those platforms with information because they're a nerd in that way. I'm a nerd in violence. You need to have a group of people working together that provides you with where the problems are. You also need to know when the problems are addressed in this community, where does the problem gets transported to? So you need to understand all of that. Because you don't have eternal resources, you have a limited amount of resources. So you want to put the resources where the need is greatest. You also want to put the resources where the need will be second greatest, because when the need is addressed in this area that is greatest, the other area will also rebel. What we've been doing a lot of, my brother Grant, what we've been doing a lot of is pilot approaches. We take a pilot community, we work with that pilot community and 3 other communities. Let's say that Wilfred says, oh, wow, I see what's happening here. They kill 15 people, right? And guess what? They get help. We've only killed 10 people. We need to kill 5 more people. And I've actually seen young men sit down together in meetings and say, we need to kill a few more people to get help. And that's why pilots don't work. Everywhere I've gone, I've said to people, do your gradual work. Do the work so you know the communities that need help. Take, for example, I'll give you a quick one, Stafford. We have some schools in Jamaica that are called Tier 4 schools. Those schools will never get more than 5% passes of CXCs. It means that those schools are so torn apart in terms of the communities that the children come from that they will never be able to do well. And the 5% are the isolated, crazy people who send their children there, whose children could have gone elsewhere. In other words, 0 passes. They're just holding areas. They're basically picnic prisons. They're not schools. If we take those schools, if we push some money into the Ministry of Education and say, we're anchoring these schools, we're looking at ACs, we're looking at the boys who've been raped. By the way, these are the only places in Jamaica where you'll see boys being raped more than girls. I'm certain that's a shocker to you, that there's a group of boys who are more likely to be sexually assaulted than girls. That's how bad these areas are. And a sexually assaulted boy, when he hits my database, is going to kill on average 12 persons once he gets into a gang. He is not the person you can talk to. If we take these areas, rather than just select a nice community that gives us good results, because that's what we've been doing. There are 7 communities in Jamaica where once you put your money there, you'll get good results to tell Washington and London. We need to stop these project approaches and have a national plan for violence. And that means working at the community based on data that this community, if helped, will also help these other 2 communities. We don't have any such framework. What people have been doing is doing advertisement and checklisting work. I did a good work.
Wait a minute. I have to jump in because what Dr. Gale is saying is so important, and the attendees are listening very closely. But Dr. Gale, as you said earlier, we heard earlier, we are not the government, right?
Right.
So we want you to prescribe things that we can do. Because if we wait for government, we're not going to get anywhere. So I want you to focus your attention as, okay, let's take if it's the picnic prison schools, if it's give us some 3 or 4 concrete examples of what you think the diaspora can do with the limited resources that we have. We don't have a lot, but we're willing to share what we have. We're willing to go and beat the bushes for more if necessary. So your guidance will be very helpful. And that will be for Jamaica, for Trinidad, for Belize, all the diaspora who are concerned about the country. Give us some specific ideas of what the diaspora can do, because we cannot wait for government. Thank you very much.
Take the Tier 4 schools. I guarantee you, if we pay attention to the Tier 4 schools, a study came out some years ago that said 50% of the murders in a particular area in Kingston came from the same schools. If we take those Tier 4 schools, spend the first year in just trying to get them out of gangs, that's the first year, and trying to provide, adopt their families. If we get, and by the way, I've said to the Minister of Education, if you start to focus on your Tier 4 schools, not even your Tier 3 schools yet, just the Tier 4 schools, you are going to begin to see a massive change. What does that need? It needs social workers. It needs guidance counselors. It need food at the level of their families. Okay, how large is this group? It's about 300. It's literally about 300 communities working around about 12 schools. They are just flat out at the base of everything, and they produce repeat killers, and repeat killers in Jamaica account for 53% of our murders. So that's where I would put my attention, not on one of the sexy communities that we know. We know them, you know, we know them by name. Grand Spen, Fletcher's Land, everybody knows that. There's 7 of them, right? And every year they get monies.
Dr. Gill, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but some what you're saying and the question that Dr. Nelson asked there. Last week, Saturday, we were at the UWI and a roundtable talk, and there were some principals there. There were 5 principals from across the island that they get together. And as we said, what the diaspora can do to help in this. And you know what? They asked us to help to put a policy, PTA.
Yes.
All the schools, and say, regardless what you do with the kids, if the PTA, and most of the schools do not have PTAs,
yes,
or active PTAs. So this is one of the things that we need to put into place.
Because,
yeah.
Because children cannot be poor of themselves.
Yeah.
It's their families that are poor. That is why I said to you, the communities around them and the parents around them and so forth. At Fathers Inc., and Children First, I'm the chairman of Fathers Inc. and the chairman of Children First. And what we do is we adopt the family. That's what I mean by adopting the family. So I find a young man, his name is Herbs. Let's say it's Herbs, right? I take his mother, I make sure his sister, I make sure he can go to school and he can also hustle. And I then find a mentor, right? I will make a call to Back to Life, which is a big mentorship group. There are 7 of them in Jamaica. And I make sure that he has a mentorship system and he takes his entire, and within 2 years, right? Anywhere Children First operates, the homicide rate goes down. Why? Because that's what we do. And that's why the principles are correct.
Are you aware of the new policy that they're bringing into school now? They started it 2 weeks ago with the restorative justice. They have the minister, Mr. Kenneth Wilson. He did two days of program in the school there in primary school in Augustown, how to resolve conflict between parents and kids. Are you aware of that that's going on right now that they want to roll out?
Yes, I know Snake personally. He was part of our Partners for Peace back in the 1990s. Yeah. We call him Snake, right? But again, that's a secondary.
Okay.
Mediation is a secondary. You could mediate between me and Stafford for 10 years. If I am hungry, Stafford is not safe.
Yeah. Employment, creative welfare. Thank you very much.
All right, if there are no more questions, let me just say bye.
Mr. Rattigan has a question for you.
Yeah, that's
sorry.
it.
Yes.
That's it from Mr. Rattigan.
Yes, good afternoon to everyone. Herbs, another good presentation, as Stafford said. And, you know, I'll go along with Dr. Nelson in saying that we've gone to the point now where we have to start thinking about what we in the diaspora do, because you know for a fact that the government is for all intents and purposes useless. And I say this across the region. Now, I approach the issue from a different perspective. I approach it from a law enforcement perspective.
Right.
And one of the things I look at is, well, first of all, the Minister of National Security made it clear last year that he doesn't want any assistance going from the diaspora to anyone involved in his ministry. He wanted to go from the diaspora to the embassy to the ministry, and then they will dole out the assistance how they see fit. And that was a problem because I had a particular policeman who had a specific issue, and he asked if I could help, and I was willing to help. But when the minister made this clear, he said, you know what, don't even bother to send me the assistance, because more than likely I won't get it. And so you're going to be wasting your time. So that's number one. When we talk about the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of National Security, you mentioned like an audit. There is so much corruption there, because if you start talking about, and again, this is across the region, Trinidad, Belize, across the region, if you start looking at taxpayer funds, because there's no such thing as government funding. The money comes from the taxpayers or donors, right? Whether it's a donor agency or a donor country. And I agree with you that an audit should be done. And I've preached this for years, because the question you ask yourself is, where does the money go? As you said, sometimes you see a project over here, a project over there, but it doesn't really help. Let me share something with you. February of last year, the Minister of National Security, Dr. Chang, he announced that there was a program, an initiative called Plan Secure Jamaica. And over a 7-year period, Jamaica was going to spend 1.2 billion with a B US dollars to address crime issues in Jamaica. Then he also said that between 2016 and 2017, they were going to spend about $346.7 million. We don't know where that money went. Recently, IDB allocated money for a particular project in Jamaica. And I saw where journalists were asking for an accounting of the funds. And thus far, there have been no answers. Now, I happen to know the gentleman who's in charge of the IDB for the Caribbean, and I was supposed to meet with him last night. I'm going to meet with him sometime this week because I'm going to ask him, you know, has there been an accounting? And the problem with that is, as you said before, because I worked for the U.S. government for 30 years, and I worked in embassies all over the world. When I said we, meaning the U.S. embassies, they have a program where they have to provide certain assistance and they do a check mark. Right. They don't do follow-up. So once they get the money and they provide it to you, that's it. Unless someone starts to make a big stink about it, then there's an investigation. But more often than not, there is no question about where the money went. And so for State Department, they can, this particular agency, whether it's USAID or INL or FBI, whatever, they can say, well, we said that we were going to provide training on major case management or whatever it is. And we did. And nobody asked about the money. So I'm just trying to figure out, where is all of this money going? Because if you look at all the scandals in Jamaica and Trinidad and the rest of the other countries, there's enough money that's been donated or collected that we could address some of the problems you're talking about: primary, secondary, tertiary.
Yeah. Social intervention money in the last decade, I think, is 1 trillion.
10 million was just given out recently. 10 million.
A lot of money.
So I go back to Dr. Nelson's point, which is that, you know, what can we do, but how do we do it? And at the same time, call attention to the fact that money has been allocated, you know, by the diaspora and by donor agencies and donor countries and by taxpayers. So we would like to marry the money we have with whatever they have. Actually kind of asking them to say, give an accounting for the money that you've collected.
Yeah. I look at good one. I look at what some persons have done in other countries, which is to set up a unit in Jamaica. In some cases, I've seen them do it through a university, and then simply get for example, like the Ministry of Education to agree to a certain amount of social workers and so forth to be involved in the communities. And then it is a university or a unit that's doing it. Governments don't like it, but it works. And I've seen that being done all over the place, where they bypass government, just make sure the government, you put them in a position where they agree, which is, you know, we're asking these people to do this and so forth, and I want you to partner with them. But at the end of the day, they recognize that the partnership means you don't get the money in your hand. It goes through a system that has an account, where there's an accountant with a matrix, with software that says this is where each dollar is spent. I keep telling people, if you don't do things like that, you're probably not going to achieve much.
Look, if you start with the premise that anybody who gets rich being a politician is a criminal. Anybody who gets rich being a politician is a criminal. If you start with that premise, and then you start devising ways and schemes as to how to make sure that monies are accountable for, then I think you're off to a good start. The problem is, where are these people? Where are these people?
Yeah.
And I've looked across the Caribbean, and I mean, we're doing a presentation later on corruption. And that big C is you'd be amazed at how dramatic the effect is on almost anything and everything.
Yes, including rationalizing crime. Because when you speak to young men in groups and you say to them, you know, why do you scam? Well, the government is a scammer. How do you get around that? I mean, so you drive from the UWI, you drive miles and miles to go sit down with a group of guys, and you think, yes, I feel pumped up today. I'm gonna encourage them to come out of scamming, and they floor you with the first thing.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. How do you encourage, or maybe discourage, a young man or a young woman who comes from an inner city community, limited resources, and when they look for mentors, when they look for people to emulate, they see criminals, they see scammers. How do you get to that person to say, look, there are other ways to, where we can get you to be a productive member of society? And I'm talking about whether it's stage 1, 2, or 3. What's the mechanism to do that? Because they're listening to you, but at the same time, they have they want to be fed, and they're looking at this guy in the corner who's making tons of money with no education. He's got the guns, he's got money, he's got the power, he's got women, he's got the community under his control, and then you're telling him you need to go to school so that you can become a better citizen. Right. How do you balance that?
Difficult sale, but there's a way to do it. What I've done successfully at Children First and Fathers Incorporated is by sitting down with these young people and asking them a basic question. What do you see yourself as in the next 5 years? 70% of them will say dead. Right? Those are difficult to work with, but the ones who say, who have some fantasy of a life, right? You can begin to work with those. The ones that say dead, when you take them from hardcore communities and they tell you we're gonna live like 100-watt bulb, no LED, no LED, 100-watt original bulb, burns bright and then blow quickly, and then the glass chariot takes me to Dovecot. And they tell you this very clearly because their ontological security is non-existent. That it means you have to begin to work with them, and it has to be continuous. You have to go at them repeatedly. One of the things we've been successful in doing is taking them onto the Mona campus. When they come to the gate, there's a Jesus Christ Kugyal. That's the first thing. And by the time they see the volume of women on the Mona campus, we know we've cracked them. All right. And they go, Jesus. And we take them back to the university until we get them into open, because a lot of them already have 7 CXCs. You'll be shocked to know. The best of the scammers have CXCs. They are the lucky ones. They're not the worst ones. And we try to show them what happens between the scammer who is on the lower tier, who's doing the killing, and the ones at the top. The ones at the top open car marts and all of these things. One at the bottom, because they have no ontological security, they buy weapons, because weapons give them an assurance, a false assurance of tomorrow. So we have to understand them at that level and try to shift them from the bottom away to a sense where they have ontological security. And we do some very weird tricks. Take them places, take them away from the sewage running in the streets and the fancy car parked beside the sewage, and take them into space where they see grass. We had a boy rolling on the grass some years ago, just rolling on the grass, never seen grass in his life. These are the things we do. We take them to Negril. They've never seen 7.5 miles of beach, and to show them that life exists. And we say to them, the people who enjoy these things don't have the kinds of money you have. So why are they enjoying that kind of life? They're enjoying that kind of life because they have their money in a manner that allows them not to look over their back. And so we use this reality to show them what's happening. And believe me, 25% of them normally change.
Well, that's interesting, Stafford. One quick question, and I hate to interfere with the process, but I'll share a personal story with you. My father was an alcoholic, and he went to rehab more than a dozen times. And every single time he came back, guess what? He came back to the same circumstances. There was a liquor store across the street.
Yes.
So the question is, when you take these people, whatever country, doesn't matter, and you expose them to this different lifestyle, At the end of the day, you're bringing them back
No.
from where they came.
No, we don't.
Right?
That's the
Okay.
difference. We set up a mentor for them, especially a businessman. And we get them into apprenticeship systems, right? Once they agree, the big problem is for them to agree. That's the 25%. And once we get that 25%, we've had now 17 valedictorians of universities in the United States from the streets here. 17. But the big challenge at Children First and Fathers Inc. is to get them to agree that I'm going to try. That's the hard nut. And then when they do, we can get the mentorship. We can even get them to leave the community. They don't go back, because going back is the same liquor shop.
Dr. Gale.
Yes.
Herb Nelson, congratulations on the presentation. Just a quick thing here. Serving as a U.S. Army recruiter down in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
Southwest side of Houston, we had several Jamaican gangs down there.
Mm-hmm. And
they owned one of the biggest nightclubs, hired the best lawyers. They had the HPD, Houston Police Department. At least 8 members were running security for them. And this is a place where they came together at this club, no weapons. They had the ultimate in security. Now, I got an invitation to show up, and I did. And it was just amazing to me, the civility in the place. But some of the prettiest women you'd find were there, and they were going to Thurgood Marshall Law School. So what happens, one of the guys explained to me, when any of my people get in trouble, we go and we get one of these young female lawyers that is going with somebody, and she goes down and she does the bail and everything else. And she goes to court with them. And, they're getting their people off. Their people are walking.
They're a family.
So, yeah, they're a family. So therein lies the problem of how, when these guys see this and they realize they have to protect their money, right? The females tell them how to invest it also, especially if they're in financial investments.
That is one of the reasons why we never ask a poor mentor to mentor these boys. We're not going to take a mentor who earns who takes home $200,000 per month and is struggling and gets broken down on the car on the road. We get people who these young men can see that there is money that is legal, and that's why it works. The problem we have is that we don't have enough of these men who are willing to do this. And sometimes we have to bother one mentor for 5 years before he succumbs to our badgering and agrees. Because the point is, in order for a young man, they're coming from a setting where it's blood in, blood out. It's I will die for you. I've worked with 17 major gangs and 90 smaller splinters. And I can tell you that when they say to you that, Herbert, my namesake, we will die for you, that's what they mean. And therefore, you have to get somebody who understands, who will come down. I'll give you a case. I had a mentor 3 years ago who walked down into a community, right? He said, I heard a shot being fired, and it sounded like the gun that was described by my mentee. Where is he? And people are like, sir, do you realize you're light skinned? This black people place this, And he says, I don't care. And that boy today is doing medicine because somebody risked his life. That's the kind of madness we have to have from mentors. Otherwise, it doesn't work, because that's the madness. That's a madness type of love that they get, even though the love is manipulative. So we have to manipulate them positively, because that's what it's about. It's about manipulation. When I train violence interrupters here in Jamaica, it's the same thing. I have to make them understand that what you're doing is manipulating people. This is not about being soft and kind and being mama and papa. These kids are way past that. It's about manipulating them. I've now mentored 278 young men and 30 young women myself in the last 30 years at Fathers Inc. And I tell you this, not one, we don't lose a child. because it's about making them understand the depth at which you will go to make sure they're okay. Sitting down with dons and negotiating from them. I remember sitting down with a don and I said, how much money do you lose when I take this boy? And he says, take him and go on, man. Because I said to him, I will pay. And he said, where will you get the money from? I said, there are legal monies out there, that not just illegal money. There are legal monies out there that I will go and beg. And he looked at me and he says, I'm fed up of you. Take him and go on. It's that kind of thing. Otherwise, they go right back to the drinking shop, as you say.
Okay. Am I allowed to speak now? Can I?
No. We've got David need to come in. David, you have something you're going to say?
Oh, well, what it was is that a long time ago, I worked as a correction officer in federal Bureau of Prisons. And I remember sitting down with one of the inmates, who was a Latino, and he looked around the cell block and he said, CO, he said, everybody here looks like me, either Hispanic, Puerto Rican, Dominican, what have you, or Black. The one white guy that was there was John Gotti. But what he told me was he wished he had lived his life differently and that he hadn't followed the gang culture. And we have to somehow break that gang, and as a result, it occurred to me that somehow we have to break into and break up that gang culture whole on these young people. Otherwise, they're going to end up in MCC like him. And he was very emphatic about it. And he was like, my kids can't come up the same way I did because I'm going to succumb to the same pressures. What are the things that we can do to dissuade them from going into that gang culture? Not just education, but we have to create other avenues for them that is nonviolent, that is away from the gang culture, that's away from negative lifestyle.
Thank you. Good one. All right. So violence is a byproduct of our social ills. What have we been doing? We've been attacking the symptom. That's the point I've been making. We've been attacking the symptom. We've been trying to infiltrate and to break up gangs as if gangs are not both physical and abstract. And it's the abstract part that comes and bites us in the butt. We physically remove a gang. I can list you a lot of gangs and them that have been removed. And just a mile away from that, another gang springs up. Because a gang is both physical and abstract. It's a result of the corruption and the cruelty and all the garbage that we do that we call policies. And that's why I saw somebody, I was smiling because someone typed, I glanced across and saw it, that we often don't look at the work of Johan Galtung. He says that the biggest violence is structural violence. It's not the physical violence you're seeing. That physical violence is long ago created. I said to a woman just recently, right? She says, my husband is a batterer. I said, chances are the time, that day when he hit you, that hit came 60 years ago, because if you had checked his family and his family before that, you would have seen that they have a history of battering. In other words, what we often pay a lot of attention to is the result of a long chain of things. I guarantee you, if you have a system that dries up, that dries up the recruitment pool, you will be wrecking violence. Give you a quick one. 2001, there was an assessment in London that found that I think 75% of monies in a cohort had cocaine residue on it. 75%. You can you imagine that a group of people use so much cocaine that 75% of their £5 note had cocaine residue on it? Yet, what is the homicide rate? What is the homicide rate of London? 1.9. It's one of the safest cities to live. Because They don't have the social ills that create the drama, and they have central political authority, which is why I showed you that diagram that says there's a social side, but there's also a governance side. And in our case, both sides are bad. So in other words, a lot of people spend time going directly at gangs when gangs are a result. My training, my strategy is to go at the things that feed gangs, right? Things are so bad that Don told me, the guys in my gang are too violent, Doc. What can we do? Picture that. And Don tells me the kids in my gang are too bad, right? That is the extent to which Dons, I interviewed 28 Dons in 1 week, and only one said he wasn't scared of the guys he was working with. 27 of 28 says we are scared of them. That is the extent to which we reach, because these kids have no ontological security. They have no sense of tomorrow, right? So we're at the stage where Dons are saying, boy, they really want better material to make money, because ultimately what a gang leader wants to do is to make money and to have power. So again, we have to go to the top of the sewage plant and turn it off. And that means investing in human resources, investing in young people, taking those people and transforming them, but at the same time, demanding of government and everybody the resources needed so that we don't have to be doing this forever.
Okay. I believe I believe this go ahead.
Can I please? Dr. Claire Nelson has been saying this for quite a while, and she always asks the question when we are forum, what can we do? How can we help? When I went to Jamaica just 2 weeks ago for the Jamaica diaspora, that was one of my key factors to go in the community to find out from these community people, what can the diaspora do and how can do? And the central thing is job. They are very creative. Now, I'm going to use Augustown. They have a farm there. They come together, they have an Augustown farm, they do that stuff. And what the Reverend have said to me when we met on last week, Saturday, they have products. They have natural juice and products and things like that, but they do not have a market. Mm-hmm. And I made contact with someone in the Bronx who have a little shop and find out if he could take some of those products. Same thing in other communities. They're creative. They will need jobs. There are kids. There are 4 kids, both male and female, that leave Central Village, have to hide out somewhere, and the person contact me to say get them in the army. They have passes. They have subjects. They didn't pass the test to get into the JDF because they did not have math and English. What we did is work with someone in the hotel industry, and they're employed. They just need to have a safety to earn the jobs, to earn that they can survive with support their families. They don't really want to go into gang. But as Dr. Claire Nelson said, we have to find a way of how we can help and what we can do. They need help, and some of them are putting it out. They have people who are doing the chicken in their backyards. That we can get them to work together on some farm or something, but we need to give them stability, employment, and they can have their product being sold. We can seek a market overseas or something. Yeah. That's what I think we could do. We need to work with it.
There are some units in Jamaica that work effectively despite the storm we live in. Children First works. The Fathers Incorporated is under the Department of Sociology, Psychology, and Social Work. This is a university outreach. Even though I'm the chair of Fathers Inc., I would not say that is your first go-to. The first go-to would be Children First, Claudette Pius in Spanish Town. That's an area that that just needs to be transformed. And everywhere they go, Old Harbor Bay, until we had to leave because of lack of resources, they've done well, right? If you just Google Children First, you'll see there are other programs in the country that work where there are no corruption discussions and so forth, because the board is also made up of children. Children are on the board and they ask the worst questions. Where the money there, right? So groups like those in Jamaica work. And I've been saying to persons, you know, when I go to meetings with IDPs and I hear the government is getting, you know, 50 million US dollars, and I say, wow, wow. If Children First got 1% of that, we double the impact of the entire government. And I think this has to be, Dr. Nelson, you're correct. This has to be the issue. It has to be that you get to a point where you realize that you have to go directly and leave the middleman out.
I'm going to jump in because we have to close down and say that I'm really happy that I've been sitting here listening to, if not all, most of what you had to say this morning, Dr. Gale. Herb, I want to thank you for bringing his work to our attention. I think people and attendees are glued. A lady actually asked for your slides, and I said, "What you want him slide for? Come join us if you want to do work. You don't need no slide. Everything up on the internet, right?" Here's the thing. We're at a stage now when we have people starting to post about Jamaica being a failed state. Jamaica is not a failed state. Jamaica is being failed by its leaders. That's a different conversation.
Yes.
However, as a Rastaman once told us last year, no man, the tail can't walk the dog, we are the lion. So we the people need to understand that it's our responsibility at 60 years of so-called independence to free yourself from mental slavery. When you said you had to talk to the Don about how much it would cost to free this guy, I began to weep because I heard Renata Adams say many years ago in Trenchtown that the system remains a one of slavery. We are enslaved by poverty. We're enslaved by dons who keep people trapped, that you have to know how to negotiate the freedom of somebody else. And so to the extent that we have people like in Augustown, in Waterhouse, and Children's First, I personally can say that whatever influence that I have to deal with this issue will be used towards supporting the other Jamaican diaspora people, the Belizean diaspora people, the Guyanese diaspora people, whoever wants to learn from your experience. You are a true teacher for all of us to learn from. We're not underground. We're all experts in other things. I'm an engineer. I'm a futurist. I know already that the program Life Seed, which I designed, the reason why it hasn't worked, because I needed somebody like you to add the pieces. Because I said to people, I cannot do entrepreneurial training if the ethics and the mindset shift doesn't happen. It'll be like throwing, the few seeds I have on stony ground. So I don't need to recreate the wheel. I can see that hitch up myself to your star and Children's First Star and Hermitage Star and those two, because we don't live there. Our job as diaspora, as I've said before, is to build up those who are on the ground, to come alongside you guys and support with all that we have. And so I'm grateful for you for being here. I want to thank all of you for participating in this conversation. Thanks, Herb, again. But this conversation has only begun. This evening at 4 o'clock, we're going to deal with corruption in a serious way. And I tell you, our advocacy, Congresswoman Maxine Waters' staff took the time to get her to sit down and make a tape for us yesterday. We played it at 4 o'clock. So we have the ears of people. That monitoring of money, I don't know how, but we will leave no stone unturned until we find a way to get some transparency into our US taxpayers' dollar that are being sent to our region. Because at the end of the day, we cannot keep throwing good money after bad. So that a Children's First explanation should be around all the region where children are feeding their own future by being trained and equipped. And so I want to promise personally to do what I can do personally with what I have personally and talk to you about after this call about what we want to do for Jamaica 60, our 60 young leaders training, how we can expand that very rapidly and continue to work with the diaspora to have them serve as peer coaches to support what we're trying to do, the future's concept, the ontological security that a future exists has to be one of the first things that they do. And as a futurist, I hope I can work with you to design a properly culturally relevant training. So because I may not know something that has to go into my training to make it work for you, right? So to do a proper relevant training so we can do a train the trainers for those people who are working with you to expand what you're doing. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I feel very blessed and privileged. I feel so hopeful to have met you. I'm very grateful. Thank you. I hope I don't start crying again because I'm so distressed, but I thank you. I'm very grateful this morning.
Jonathan?
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Dr. Gill. Thank you, David. Thank you, Consul Rattigan. We call it Consul in the Commonwealth. And thank you, Mr. Grant. Thank you. We're missing one person. I'm not seeing Dolores, yes. Not seeing on the list.
Yeah, well, Mr. Roper too, Dave Roper.
I'm here.
Yeah. Dave Roper. So I think we're wrapping up now. Any closing comments?
I don't know. One thing I would like to ask is that it's to work towards some kind of training programs for Caribbean security. You know, violent crime is on such an all-time high and a continuous threat to the economic and political stability of the region. You know, how do we address that? I know that we talk about the kids and that's fine, but an immediate problem is the crime and violence as it exists in our streets. How do we address that? I would like to address it through some police training, some additional training being funded through maybe State Department. But as a group, we have to address this. The other thing is for the diaspora to bring funds and support to beyond the Kingston, St. Andrew region. I'm here in St. Mary. Nobody knows of anything diaspora, nothing like that. And that the school is right in front of us. They could use that help. But all of the funds and energy is corporate is dedicated to the Kingston area only. And I'd like to see that changed as well.
Yeah, David, it's a problem in Trinidad as well, where I live in East Trinidad. My area has more like I'm part Aboriginal, Amerindian, and Venezuelan who came to Trinidad 100 years ago, you know. So, and then the money, all the development projects are in Port of Spain.
Right.
Because I'm not in that crew.
And
I get
right.
Yeah, and it's something that we have to, as this group and other diaspora-related groups, have to bring assistance to the island, not just to the capital.
Right. and it's interesting because what happens when the attacks, when the SOEs and ZOSOs attack the gangs within the capital, which has, of course, you know, Greater Kingston has 1.1 million people, they go to St. Mary. It's just next door. So St. Mary has violence that nobody knows about because in our research we call them importees because the gangs in Kingston have relatives in St. Mary. If we use St. Mary as an example, and then they hide there and people get paid not to make any noise about this new neighbor that they have that just came last night. And then they have country parties where people get everything free and they gradually buy out a community in that area. And the next thing you know, the SOE people and everything come over into the rural area. And we've seen since 2005, since Operation Kingfish, right, the spreading of gang violence, as you are picking up, by 80%. Across the rural areas. That's what I was showing you on the map.
Yeah, I spoke with a sergeant from Area 2. He actually lives on my property. And he was saying the same thing, that when it gets hot in Kingston, they come out to Anato Bay
Yes,
and hang out until things quiet down again. I
yes,
got it. But what is also is that my father always used to say, when America sneezes, Jamaica catch cold.
yes.
So what we have is that this culture in America of greed and guns, it has become their religion. And that is somehow seeped in to the psyche of of Jamaica. They're only concerned with greed and violence, and we have to change that paradigm. I don't have all the answers, but that's something that we should consider.
Yeah, so a lot of the work will have to include some amount of social marketing.
Yes.
I am in media. I do Power 106 between 11 and 2 p.m. on a Monday and Tuesday. I am now the designate head of department. I'm going to start as the head of department at UWI for sociology, psychology, and social work department come August 1. And I've had to say to them, I still cannot leave radio because we have to educate people. What I'm trying to do is to get media to have programs that educate young people as to how to come out of the mess they're in, rather than just the regular media of showing them movies and talking about, Black people in America rather than Black people in Jamaica. So it's a lot of work that needs to be done, but we have to get every single soul, every single person who has a dollar and has a willingness to give that dollar to understand where to put that dollar. That has been the crisis, because as soon as it goes into the hands of the manipulators, it disappears.
I just wanted to say, Dr. Gale, I believe you're still looking for sponsors, right? Funding.
Yes, for children first.
For children
For
first.
children
yes.
first, yes.
So that should be put out there.
Yes.
Del, you have any final comments?
Just really want to thank Dr. Gale for this, I would say, inciting, educational presentation. As someone who has been living out of Jamaica for over 3 decades, believe me, I have no idea of all this taking place on the ground in Jamaica. Yes, we am aware of what is taking place here in Trinidad and Tobago. I would like to say that I agree with the education aspect, and I'm thinking we would have had talk shops upon talk shops, and we're getting nowhere. So maybe it's time for us to look at the arts, the creative arts, street theater, go into the community and use drama as a tool.
That's what Children First does.
That way you can have the residents be part of the solution. So they talk about the issues and they also come up with solutions for
I've been told, thank you, Dolores. I've been told that we have to start cybersecurity. So thank you everybody for your time, and this will be on Facebook for everybody's record. I hope to talk to Dr. Gale via email sometime. It's very good work. Thank you, Herbert, Stafford Grant, David Roper, Councillor Rattigan, and Mr. Nelson and Dr. Claire Nelson. Have a good day.